let's get straight into this winning goal, Kenny, because, well, look, you know, it was coming, but this was very, very late.
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, it was an amazing second half, particularly from young boys' point of view. Sustained pressure on the Manchester United goal, kept pushing, kept believing. United dropping off and kind of inviting the pressure. A couple of small little individual mistakes here, and no bigger mistake than that from Jesse Lingard. It's an awful back pass. You could argue maybe you don't want that type of player in that area of the pitch, but that's where he found himself. Just got to make a better decision there. It's an absolute gift. Good anticipation from Sabachu. Bit of a scruffy finish, kicks it into the ground, but great anticipation from him. And you'd have to say, probably merited on their second half performance. Like I said, they pushed forward, didn't accept the draw. Bit of belief there that they could go and get the winning goal. Great energy inside the stadium, kept pushing, didn't create a huge amount of clicker opportunities up until that point, but kept at it, kept believing, and in the end got the probably deserved winning goal. Yeah,
like that's the biggest, Richie, result in their European history. So their second campaign, and they've taken a massive scalp.
They have. I think it was a great response to the sending off. They played in the front foot. Even the substitutions the manager made throughout the game were all attack minded, and throughout the game they never had a spell where they allowed the tempo to drop. They played with loads of intensity, but there were substitutions there that the manager of Manchester United should have made that were crying out to kind of counter the dominance of young boys, particularly in midfield, and they didn't.
And did he mess with his team too much? Like what was Lingard doing in that position there?
I think to focus here on the manager for a moment, as we said at half-time, if you're down to 10 men, everyone's got to put in an extra shift, and we kept looking at footage of Ronaldo throughout that second half, doing what we expected him to do. Walking, staying down on the ground, looking for free kicks that weren't being given, and just observing what was going on around him. So it was very, very easy for young boys to get kind of 10, 15 yards into United's half because they'd no resistance whatsoever. And when you're in that role, virtually everything you do has to be selfless, because you know you're closing down players knowing you will never win it, because they'll just pass to other people around you and you're outnumbered. But you do it because the alternative is the opponents then just have time in the ball. So their heads are up, ball at their feet.
Would you have taken him off earlier?
You have to take him off earlier because he's doing absolutely nothing. Yeah. In the context of the game, you know what Ronaldo's there to do. You know what he'll deliver when he's at his best. But in a 10-man away-from-home performance with an hour with 10 men, crowd roaring like they were, you need players that can fit those conditions. Ronaldo doesn't. And there were other players in midfield. We're wondering, like, when is Pogba going to kind of impose himself in midfield? When is Bruno Fernandes going to do it?
Yeah, indeed. But you know, we've discussed it at half-time. I've heard it and read it in many places that this is the big problem with their team. All the attacking talent they have, they've strengthened the defence. You said it beforehand, but they have no midfield. Like, how are they going to win big trophies and compete if they can't control the ball?
Yeah, I think you have to obviously factor in they were down to 10 men. That was the key moment of the game, Wan-Bissaka getting sent off. It was a big decision to make when he got sent off. Clearly had to get Dalot on the pitch, and Sancho got sacrificed. I can understand that to an extent. Certainly Cristiano Ronaldo or Bruno Fernandes isn't going to get the fish hooks 36 minutes into the game. I thought half-time was the absolute key, though. When he rearranged the team and changed the shape, went with a back three, back five, and a narrow midfield three. But that was no defensive shield, that narrow midfield three. Bruno Fernandes, Pogba flanking Fred, who's having a difficult time anyway. And as Richard suggested, that lone striker then, for me, that was the time Ronaldo should never come onto the pitch. Second half, you put Jesse Lingard, plenty of pace, mobile, aggressive running. That's when you put him on the pitch, not that kind of central midfield position. That was the key decision for me half-time. He didn't make it. He left it, almost keeping his fingers crossed. And then in that period, the game got away from them.
Let's look at the equaliser.
It was coming. Like, it was coming again, because there were so many times the young boys, without much creativity or clever thinking, got to the edge of Manchester United's area, and they put the ball wide here, through Shaw's legs, and just a really good finish here in the near post. A little deflection off Shaw, good reaction here. But at this point, it was 4 minutes after this that Solskjaer makes the change to kind of shore up midfield a little bit and to take off Ronaldo up front. But it was too little too late.
Like, they've only ever won 2 games in the Champions League, and actually Ronaldo's Juventus was the other team that they beat. So, like, it's probably, is it their biggest result in their European history? Well, they're both huge for them to win tonight. The Juventus game was massive as well. Ronaldo was taken off after 72 minutes. Now, we've footage of this, and everybody was looking at this very closely, as we were, as what the reaction from Solskjaer would be, and from the player himself.
Yeah, well, I make the point. I thought this substitution should have been made at half-time. Interesting here. Solskjaer almost apologising to Ronaldo for taking him off the pitch. Look, he's just got to be stronger than that. We know he doesn't like it. He doesn't. When he wants to be the main man, he wants to be the centre of attention. He wants to stay on that pitch, and credit to him for that. But as a manager, look at the bigger picture. You've got to put the team first.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he put the team first there. I thought it was weak from Solskjaer in terms of the substitutions that he made.
What,
and in
the
particular, the
timing
timings.
Yeah,
In particular,
okay.
the timings. That substitution should have made it at half-time for me. Fernandes as well. Matches his experience and his presence, that central midfield area. And more legs and mobility, even higher up the pitch, whether it's Greenwood or Lingard. There's the decisions really that had to be made. But he had to be made earlier, and he didn't.
But even if it wasn't for strength of personality reasons, like we're sitting here speculating whether or not Solskjaer delayed doing that because he didn't want to front up against Ronaldo or annoy Ronaldo. Let's say it wasn't that. Let's say Solskjaer made it for purely footballing reasons, and he had no hesitation whatsoever with giving Ronaldo the hook when he wanted it. It was just a poor footballing decision. It was
But
a
it can't
poor,
be, yeah.
It was just
I'm not
poor
having that, Rich,
judgment.
that it was a poor football decision. Some experienced coaches there on the side who know enough about football. That's not a tactical decision, like the reasons that I said.
But it's
You're-
poor.
you're- yeah, but your
It's
man down.
completely poor. Like, there's
Yeah,
no
but your man
defensive.
down. You're sent your team up defensively. Like I said, Pogba and Fernandes still on the pitch in that central midfield area alongside Fred, who's struggling. That is not a defensive shield. That's not a defensive setup to hang on to a one-goal advantage. And you don't put a centre forward higher up the pitch in front of them, who's really picking and choosing when he decides to run after the football. I mean, that's pretty obvious. That's obvious to everybody here, and it was obvious to them. But they weren't brave enough to make the decision. Solskjaer and his support staff should have been saying to Solskjaer, look, I know we may not want to do this, but Ronaldo's got to come off now, and probably Fernandes has got to follow him as well.
But
And they've just got to
So
suck
you
that up.
think they knew the decision should have been made, he was just afraid to make it?
I think so.
I'm saying I'm
It's
possibly
very
giving him a
hard to
break
judge
here
what's
by
going on
saying
in somebody's mind.
Exactly.
But look, we can only go on the evidence with what we've seen. Maybe he thought, right, and here's me speculating about what way he's thinking. Maybe he thought, right, well, like the chap has scored a zillion goals, he'll get us another one here, put us back in front again.
But the pattern of the game, like the pattern of the game was all one-way traffic. And there was no real, to give the midfield three some leeway, they had no even token one-man shield in front of them, which most 10-men performances have.
Yeah.
They have a front player who for the main is keeping half an eye on being an outball, but the majority of his focus has to be on being an extra man in midfield because that's what's required.
you know that-
He hasn't done that in years.
Exactly. So take him off.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that the scenario needs something different that Ronaldo can deliver. And in midfield, particularly with Ronaldo doing what he was doing,
You've got to reinforce him.
Reinforce
You've got to
him.
leave him on the pitch.
Exactly.
You've got to reinforce him behind, which he never did.
Do you know
anyway.
what? We're